Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Teacher Leader Summit virtual series. My name is Ashley Chenault, and I'll be your session host and moderator. I'm going to introduce you our presenter. Her name is M. Cooper. We do ask that if you have any questions that you please post them in the chat, and she will take breaks during the session to have a question answer time. Also, we ask that you look down in the bottom left hand of your screen and click on the camera, and please turn your video off. The only video that we want to have streaming is that of the presenter. Thank you, and Em, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Ashley mentioned, my name is M. Cooper. I lead our academic strategy and school system planning work at the department. I'm very excited to be with you today as we kick off the 2020-2021 school year. As Ashley mentioned, I will be taking breaks throughout the presentation to answer any questions. I do recognize that we have quite a variety of people on this call. So we have district leaders, we have school leaders, people from different kinds of schools across the state. Some of you have heard most of this several times, and some of you, this is the very first time you're hearing this. So if you have clarifying questions or need me to elaborate on anything, please send that in the chat. I want to make sure that you all understand this information moving forward. So again, you can send those through the chat. Also, you can access the presentation through the Teacher Leader app. You can download that, or you can access it from the Teacher Leader library. And the recording of this session will be posted in about a week. So if you have colleagues who were unable to attend and that's helpful for them to hear the recording, that will be posted as well. One more thing before we get started. Ashley's going to send a link in the chat. This goes to our school improvement library, and I will be mentioning several things throughout the presentation that are linked there. So that might be a good place for you to bookmark on your computer. Several of the documents and resources that I'll mention are in the school improvement library. So that link will be coming through the chat. All right, so as we kick off the 2020-2021 school year, we are going to review 4 things this morning: Louisiana's plan for school improvement, the impact of the academic strategy from last school year, the vision for improving schools and students, and how the academic strategy supports this vision. And then we will also review how the priorities are being implemented next school year. So today we're going to walk through how our vision and strategy have evolved over the past 2 years, and then focus on the vision and strategy for this coming school year. We'll spend the majority of the time looking at what implementation of the strategy looks like for next school year as well. So just to lay the foundation about what we believe in Louisiana to get us started. So we believe that our students are smart and capable, and they are performing at levels never seen before. They're demonstrating growth across multiple measurements that show that Louisiana students are better prepared for college or career. While we are seeing positive growth in Louisiana as a result of the hard work you all are doing across these areas, from an increase in the percentage of students scoring mastery in 3rd grade to increased graduation rates, there is still more work that needs to be done. Louisiana will continue to raise the bar so that by 2025, an A-rated school is one where the average student is ready for the next level of study and given access to the same opportunities as their peers across the country. Our system will also focus on supporting struggling students in schools and providing families with an accurate picture of school, center, and school system performance through the Louisiana School Finder. Our school systems have implemented strategic academic change over the past 2 years to help reach the vision for success in Louisiana. I want to walk through how this has unfolded in our state, just to give you all a refresher and a background of where we're heading today. So 5 years ago, the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, became federal law, and it required school systems to submit plans for struggling schools to the state. Then in 2017, districts created plans for the 2018-2019 school year for schools labeled Comprehensive Intervention Required, or CIR. These are schools that have a letter grade of D or F for 3 years and or a graduation rate less than 67% in the past year. Then in 2018, the department released a new school system planning process, which added schools labeled UIR, Urgent Intervention Required. And those are schools that have a student group performance of F for 2 years and or a school suspension rate more than double the national average for 3 years. So during the presentation, you'll hear CIR and UIR schools, and these are the struggling schools we're referring to when we're referring to districts planning for struggling schools. So prior to 2018, the planning and budgeting process in place for school systems was fragmented and inefficient. School systems were planning for multiple funding sources with different areas of focus. They had separate, unaligned plans and budgets for each of them, and they all had different timelines. And so this made it very difficult for districts to create a clear, coherent plan that streamlined high leverage strategies for school improvement. Louisiana's school system planning process, which you probably hear as Super App, has been implemented the past 2 years and solved for these challenges. So it now unifies priorities in one plan with one budget on one timeline. And this process asks school systems to do a few things. One, they create and submit a plan for school improvement aligned to the department's priorities. Two, they develop and submit an aligned budget to that plan. And three, they implement their plan the following school year in partnership with their network coaches. This process starts in November with district leaders. So district leaders begin reviewing priorities, developing their strategy, creating their budget aligned to those priorities, and they submit that plan to the state in February. So the plan that your district will implement this coming year was created during this past school year. So your district has been working for months on that plan. They submitted it to us in February, and they will begin implementing that plan this school year. All right, we just adjusted our audio, so I'm going to start again from this slide. So on this slide, this is reviewing the 2018-2019 school year. So during that school year, districts planned for about 250 CIR schools. And those are our comprehensive intervention required schools. And in those schools, we focused on providing teachers high quality ELA and math curriculum and training. And our network teams worked with school leaders to complete curriculum implementation observations. During that first year, we learned that nearly all of our teachers in those classrooms were using high quality curriculum. So a huge lift across the state in our most struggling schools. Our teachers and students were diving into high quality curriculum. However, teachers were not getting to the most complex parts of the lesson, nor were kids doing the majority of the work in the classroom. So it was clear that the next layer of implementation needed to focus on providing teachers with the knowledge and space to prepare for high quality lesson delivery through building capacity at the school level. These learnings from the 2018-2019 school year helped shape the vision and strategy for this past year, 2019-2020. The vision for kids was that every day, every student should be building knowledge of the world, reading meaningful text, expressing ideas, and solving complex problems. The strategy included adding a few things. So we added our UIR schools, urgent intervention required. We added that districts must address workforce needs within their district, and then we focused on building school-based capacity by adding content leaders, intervention content leaders, mentor teachers, and training for principals. Building on prior years of work and results, the support aligned to that vision and strategy clearly fit into 4 buckets. So in order to achieve the vision for students, teachers had to do a set of things. Your school leaders had to do things. Your district leaders and the state all had to do a set of actions, and they must work in tandem in order to ensure the vision for students comes to life at a school. So each teacher must be prepared to deliver high quality lessons. School leaders must use observation, planning, and coaching to support teachers in delivering high quality lessons. District leaders have to support school leaders, making sure they have the materials and training they need. And state leaders, we must collaborate with districts on their plans for improvement. So collectively, these 4 groups' efforts support the vision for student success. State leaders help district leaders help school leaders help teachers, and teachers bring that vision for student success to life in their classroom. So let's talk about last school year. So in 2019-2020, districts included planning for their UIR schools. And this added about 200 struggling schools across the state. So we now are planning for struggling schools as a whole, meaning comprehensive intervention required and urgent intervention required. So CIR and UIR schools. Despite the addition of those schools, still nearly all classrooms were using high quality curriculum. Nearly all teachers received training on that curriculum, and nearly all schools were using that curriculum during common planning time. So great progress was made, but gaps remained. Data continued to show that students were not doing the majority of the work, and teachers weren't getting enough support to prepare for high quality instruction, unpacking units and building content knowledge. And these challenges were particularly acute when considering struggling students. What we learned here, along with other data, highlighted gaps that remained, and it guided the continued evolution of the vision and strategy for improvement in our state. So the past 2 years have shaped the vision and strategy for this coming school year. So I want to dive into what that looks like. And as a reminder, this was rolled out last November with district leaders through the school system planning process. So your district leaders have worked since November to develop a plan that's aligned to this vision and strategy for this coming school year. So when your district leaders built their plan for next year, they prioritized strategies that focused on improving schools. And improving schools ensure 3 things. Students are mastering content and making progress each year. Students are on track to graduate and have a post-secondary plan. And teachers are delivering high-quality instruction for every kid every day. And at those schools, we have 6 types of school leader roles that are essential in supporting student achievement. So we have our intervention content leaders. Those are the leaders on campus that support teachers during planning time on addressing student learning gaps. Then we have content leaders. So those are your experts in math, ELA, or science, and they are re-delivering content training to their peers. Our school leaders, so your principals, assistant principals, deans, instructional coaches, they are responsible for providing access to that high quality curricula and the training for it, and also establishing common planning time structures so that teachers can plan effectively. Then you have your mentor teachers. So those are your teachers that support new, resident, or struggling teachers in delivering high quality instruction. We have our counselors that are supporting students in graduation planning and post-secondary success. And then we have our vendors or professional learning partners that provide the training and coaching for educators at the school. And all of these leaders work together in bringing the vision for improving schools to life. Our school leaders focus efforts on students and teachers. So for students, they are ensuring that they're learning grade level content with their peers and that our high schoolers are accessing the classes and experiences they need to be prepared for post-secondary life. And for our teachers, they're making sure that they're trained by experts on high quality curriculum and that they are planning collaboratively for units and lessons. Now, our vision for students remains the same. Every student, every day, should be building knowledge of the world, reading meaningful text, expressing ideas, and solving complex problems. And the work that our school leaders do every day has a focus on this vision. And our strategy across the state is aligned to this. In planning for next school year, your district leaders continue to plan for the 4 strategies in place from last year. So high quality curriculum, assessments, and PD, addressing teacher workforce needs, and building those school-based experts through mentor teachers, content leaders, and intervention content leaders. So these 4 areas were still of focus in your district plans and will still be implemented next school year. 3 new strategies were added for our struggling schools, so our CIR and UIR schools. So these were requirements for them, but these are things that every great school should do. And they were to solve for gaps in strategy learned over the past 2 years. So again, remember, data showed that teachers were not getting to complex parts of lessons, students weren't doing the majority of the work, teachers didn't have common planning time to unpack and plan for units, and they weren't receiving that content knowledge training, so the content module training redelivery from their content leaders. So there was a need for a school system-wide professional development plan that emphasized two things: unpacking units during common planning time and teachers receiving content training, so the redelivery from their content leaders. And this was a requirement for school systems that had CIR schools. Our CIR high schools, so remember, they have a graduation rate less than 67%. We noticed that there was a lack of graduation planning for students to ensure that the coursework was aligned to their college or career pathway, and counselors were stretched thin. So this year, our CIR high schools are required to work with a post-secondary planning partner to support the creation and revision of IGPs, or individual graduation plans, for their high school students. The third strategy that was added was due to a gap in our schools labeled UIR for discipline. So those are our urgent intervention required schools, but for discipline, meaning they had out of school suspension rates more than double the national average for 3 years in a row. So we had, similar to our curriculum strategy being rolled out a layer at a time beginning a few years ago, we had the initial step this year for districts being to identify a district level leader responsible for this work. So school systems that had schools labeled only UIR for discipline had to select a district leader to begin this work in conjunction with support from LDOE to assess the needs of those schools and develop a plan. And so this is going to lay the foundation for a more developed strategy as the years go on. Now, we also had additional gaps. So that was in science, special education, and early childhood. While these were not required this year, there were 3 optional opportunities for funding that were available to school systems. So the first one was around science. High quality science curriculum, professional development, and content leaders were significant needs for teachers and students. And so this strategy was released in November, along with funding available for school systems with CIR and UIR schools. Next, targeted support for our UIR schools with the student group Students with Disabilities is added. And this means that schools were eligible to plan for professional development for all of their teachers on specialized supports. So things like communication, executive functioning, assistive technology. Lastly, what used to be a separate process is now included to create a cohesive birth through grade 12 planning process. And so early childhood access and quality were added. School systems developed a vision for what early childhood looks like in their area, along with a plan to increase access to high quality seats and purchase high quality curriculum and training for teachers in birth through 4-year-old classrooms. So again, your districts have plans for these strategies since November. They submitted those plans in February. They received funding to implement these strategies. And I want to share with you just a high-level view of what this looks like across our state next year. So we had 100% of plans approved with about $42 million allocated to support the implementation of those plans. So next year, we will have over 1,200 additional school-based leaders trained to support teachers. Almost every school system, while this was optional, chose to implement high-quality science curriculum and professional development. All of our CIR high schools will be working with a planning partner to ensure students are on track to graduation. All of our school systems with CIR schools created professional development plans to support teachers unpacking units during common planning and receiving that content module redelivery. 70 of our school systems with UIRA for students with disabilities will receive professional development to support their students. And 600 birth through 3-year-old seats will be added at child care sites. So this is very exciting for the 2021 school year, and your districts have already begun to shape what that plan looks like and implement that beginning this summer. I also want to mention that we are now faced with adapting our school operations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so school systems now more than ever should focus on implementing their strong academic coherent plans for the 2020-21 school year that they've already developed. But it is crucial that they are adjusting or adapting to make sure that those things still happen. And that should be that students should have a strong start to next school year, and that your district has a continuous education plan in place for modified operations or closures. And so the department, beginning a few months ago, has provided districts with guidance and funding to ensure the consistency of quality instruction happens next year despite the challenges we face. So I want to talk through what this means and what your districts are currently working on. So if they haven't yet, they will be sharing with you all a plan that includes the things listed here, but they have been working for months. And as you all know, when different guidance comes out, when public health release updated guidelines and recommendations, those plans are tweaked as that comes out. And so know that they are working very hard on developing a plan specific for your district and your schools, and we are helping them to do that. And those are in 2 areas. So they're grouped by a strong start for every student and a continuous education plan. So let's talk through what the strong start for every student looks like. Given the loss of instructional time from last year backed up to summer, it is imperative that every student's needs are assessed with a diagnostic or screener at the onset of the coming school year. Using that data along with data from last year, students with the most significant learning gaps should have a plan to address those needs. High school students track to graduation should be updated as needed, and those that just graduated should be supported in their post-secondary plans. So yes, these things should be happening every year, but it is important given the months that have passed and anticipating lost time in this coming school year that districts and school leaders are focused on these things. So they're administering a diagnostic or screener, which are the same diagnostics and screeners that have existed for a while. So your kindergarten entry assessment, your K-3 literacy screener, and your ELA and math diagnostics, or curriculum embedded diagnostics from a high quality curriculum. Those should be administered. Data should be used to identify the students that need the most support, and plans should be made to address those needs for students. And then for our high schoolers, we want to make sure that you're still on track to graduate. Their individual graduation plans are updated as needed, And then those that graduated this month are supported in whatever their post-secondary plan is. And so your district, again, is working on what this will look like in your district and at your schools. Then the second bucket is about a continuous education plan. So how will education, high quality instruction be maintained during modified operations or closures? And so again, your district leaders are working on this as we speak. And those plans will include a few things. One, every pre-K through 12th grader has a device and internet access. Two, there is a plan for communicating to families and employees about district operations, virtual learning, and the expectations around those. Three, that there are multiple modes of instructional delivery, and that includes virtual learning. Four, there are staffing models that consider the needs and responsibilities of staff members. And five, district calendars and school schedules are adjusted and consider how to address learning loss from the past school year and anticipate time lost for this coming school year. So LDOE, along with your school systems, have invested time and money into these priorities, which are being built on their existing priorities that they developed in their strategic plan for next year. Before we move on to what implementation of this strategy looks like, I'm going to pause to check to see if there's any questions in the chat. And if you have questions, again, please send them through. I know a lot of this is a refresher for some, but a lot of this could be brand new to people. So I want to make sure that if you have any clarifying questions that we address those as they come through. All right, we do have a question about the LEAP 360 materials and when they'll be available. So for the LEAP 360 diagnostic materials, so that's ELA and math in grades 3 through 8. And then in high school, it's your LEAP 2025 ELA and math courses. So algebra, geometry, English 1, and English 2. Those diagnostics will still be available like they have been the past several years. They will be available beginning July 1st. And teachers and school test coordinators, district coordinators will still have access to the same materials they have to support the implementation of that assessment. The next question is about high quality curriculum assessments. So if you are using a high quality curriculum at your school, some of them have curriculum embedded diagnostics. All of them have curriculum embedded assessments. But if you're using a high quality curriculum, the assessments within that high quality curriculum are high quality. So you can use those assessments. If they have diagnostics, you can use those and should. But you should do one or the other. So you should do either the LEAP 360 diagnostic or your high quality curriculum embedded diagnostic. Good question. And I'll add, this was a question yesterday in other sessions. So for the other grades, the LEAP 360 diagnostics and your curriculum embedded assessments have been around for several years. So have the K through 3 screeners. So I just want to go through those really quickly. So for your kindergarten entry assessment, remember this has been around for a very long time. It is the same process your district uses. They choose from 2 assessments, TS Gold or Teaching Strategies Gold and DRDP. So it is a law and policy that every kindergartner takes this screener, and it's done within the first 30 days of school. So this is something your district has done for over a decade. It is most likely the same process they will use for the kindergarten entry assessment. The second group is your K through 3 literacy screeners. Same thing, this has been around for a while, state law, it's policy. All K through 3 students are given a literacy screener within the first 30 days, and your district chooses from 4. It's either DIBELS 8th, DIBELS Next, STEP, or STEEP. And so that process, I would imagine, is a well-oiled machine in your district as well, as they do it every year. So again, those screeners have been in place, the diagnostics have been in place. There's nothing new as far as new assessments. The focus here for Strong Start is they are using the data from those screeners or assessments along with other data they have to determine which students have the most significant gaps, and they're creating a plan for those students. So that could mean more instructional time, that could mean learning academies, that could be during planning, they are using their common planning time to strategically place for each student that has gaps where they're going to adjust or embed supports and lessons as they're aligned to those units or lessons. So it could look very differently across the districts and schools, but that is something that should be a focus so that come August or whenever your district is starting school, they have a strong start to the school year and there's a plan for that student. We have a question about how to, or if there's guidance as to help with those gaps. So this is what your intervention content leader is for. And if you don't have an intervention content leader, you may be getting one this school year. We can help provide you with more information about it. But they should be helping teachers plan for those students and use the curriculum embedded supports to address those needs. So what we don't want to happen is, which we know is not best practice and not effective for kids, is we're just going to use the first 2 weeks of school to catch them up from last year. And we know that that's not the good or the right thing to do. So what they should be doing is finding where those gaps are and then what lessons or units coming up are the appropriate places to then scaffold or embed supports aligned to their gaps. And so definitely use your intervention content leaders for this. We also have materials on our website for it. Again, you can email me and I'm happy to connect you as well with more information. We have a question about grading, like the grading scale. This is a district decision. So I would reach out to your district leaders to ask the question about the grading scale in your district. The next question is, are districts submitting the Strong Start information? So yes, school systems, actually today is the due date. So school systems are submitting their application for their Strong Start plan. And they will receive additional funding to support that plan. So they've received the majority of the funding for those priorities a few weeks ago, and they'll receive the rest of it in a few more weeks. And they are creating a plan for all of those things listed on the screen, yes. And then the last question is about Lead 360 examples for diagnostics and interim. So for grades 3 through 8, there is a math and ELA diagnostic. And then in high school, there's a diagnostic for English 1, English 2, algebra, and geometry. And again, these have not changed. So these are the same ones your districts have been using the past 2 years. There's no change in the types of assessments offered. So I just want to be clear about that. There's not additional assessments that are coming out. And then the question is about social studies. So no, these are for ELA and math only. There's not a social studies or science one. They're just addressing ELA and math. And then we have another question about curriculum embedded assessment. So depending on which high quality curriculum your district uses for each subject, there are definitely embedded assessments. Some of them have diagnostics. So I would check with your school leader or your district leader or in your curriculum to see if those diagnostics exist within there. All right, the next question is about what a content leader and intervention content leader is and what the difference is. So I'm going to go through this in a little bit, but just to quickly explain this because your school may not have one. For content leaders, these are selected by your principal, and typically schools have one ELA and one math. This year we're adding science content leaders to the mix, so they may have not selected who that person is yet, but they would have a science content leader if their district is implementing science. And these are roles at the school level that are selected by the principal, and these content leaders attend training, they complete an assessment to get certified as a content leader, and they deliver content modules or content training to their peers at the school level. So for example, if you are teaching at a middle school and you are an ELA content leader, you are then training your other ELA teachers on that content to increase their content knowledge. And this looks different district to district and school to school. Sometimes these are done on a PD day every month. Sometimes some of it's done before school starts, and then the rest they do in January on those professional development days where kids are not there. But the implementation of how they train teachers looks different district to district, school to school. But they are a content expert that trains teachers on content. Your intervention content leader, there are two typically at a school. It's usually a principal or another school leader and a teacher. And again, these are selected by the principal, and they attend training. They complete an assessment to become a certified intervention content leader. But their role is to help teachers plan. So they are in common planning or helping with the agendas or presenting or supporting certain grade levels in planning. And their focus is planning for those diverse learner supports and helping teachers understand what supports exist within the curriculum to help address gaps. So content leader trains teachers on content, and intervention content leader is supporting common planning time. Okay, we have one more question about LEAP 360 diagnostics. Should they be given in part by unit or at once? So the diagnostic is not by unit. The diagnostic is an assessment given at one time. Now it could be broken up by session. So maybe Monday you take session 1, Tuesday you take session 2. But it's given at the beginning of the year, or if you're at high school and you're on block scheduling, beginning of the course, so you may give it in January. But it is diagnosing at that point in time what the student knows and what gaps they have that are aligned to the upcoming year. So it'll talk about prerequisites and things like that. If you're using a curriculum embedded assessment, those are aligned by unit or module and should be given at that point in time. But LEAP 360 diagnostics are at the beginning of the year or the course. LEAP 360 interim assessments are over time, and they're aligned to curriculum, and they are aligned to the standards that would have been taught at that point in the year. So the diagnostic is at the beginning of the year or the course, interims are throughout. Okay, so let's talk about what implementation of these priorities looks like for next school year. So we've talked about the vision for our students, our improving schools, our leaders, We've talked about those 6 different types of leaders at a school level that support that work. And we've talked about the strategy that your districts have been planning for next school year. But what I want to do next is talk about what that looks like in K2, 3-12, your teacher leader roles, and then graduation planning. So I'm going to talk through each of these, and I'm going to talk through what we've done already, so what's already in place, and then what you see on the screen are the additional actions that are being added this year. So in the past for K2, the implementation priorities or those actions have focused on only ELA and teachers doing 3 things in those classrooms: using Tier 1 curriculum, modeling letter-sound relationships, and students practicing letter-sound relationships, and then students reading and responding to complex text from the curriculum. So these are things that should still be in place next year, but there are some shifts that we are making to adjust and align to the improved strategy. So when a school leader or a district leader or your network coach or when your teachers are planning, they should be thinking about these actions and how they're planning for them or what leaders are looking for when they observe classrooms. But we're adding math this year, and we are also making sure that teachers are doing a few things and that that's evident in a classroom. And the first is both in ELA and math, teachers are actively monitoring student learning and providing feedback on student work. Yes, this should always be happening. This should already be happening, but this is just an additional look for when a teacher or a school leader or a district leader is observing or supporting a teacher in instruction. In math, leaders should be looking for teachers providing those rich experiences to develop mathematical understanding and vocabulary, and that they're providing opportunities for kids to solve real-world problems. So again, yes, these should always be happening. These are best practices. The difference here is we're adding just another layer of look-fors so that when district, school leaders, and teachers are talking about what's happening in classrooms, they're focusing on additional actions this year of progress. In grades 3 through 12 in previous years, we focused on ELA and math. And in ELA, we wanted students using Tier 1 materials. We wanted them engaged in their grade level text and participating in core instruction from the curriculum. So that should continue to happen. In years past for math, we focused on students solving curriculum-based problems and explaining their reasoning. Teachers were focusing on pacing being on schedule, and that students were doing grade level work with the supports they need. So we still want that to be a focus. But remember, we've added science curriculum this year, and so we have science that's been added to these look-fors, and then we have a couple of additional actions. So now, when we're talking about grades 3 through 12, we're talking about ELA, math, and science. And the new actions this year are that teachers are preparing for units by incorporating unfinished learning where it's aligned. They're preparing for lessons by identifying the misconceptions or the points of struggle that students will have and the supports that are there while they're planning. So they're planning for what this looks like for individual students and what that support looks like for them. And then still focusing on daily and year-long pacing, and then that monitoring student learning and providing feedback. So again, we still want all of the great things that have been in place from years past, but this is just the additional layer that we're adding. And I would mention for K2 and 312, you will notice these additional actions have been updated in multiple resources, including observation tools. Again, those are in that link that was sent in the chat, the School Improvement Library. So everything has been updated to align to the improved strategy and the additional implementation actions. So you'll see this everywhere. So let's talk through those leader roles at the school. So for our content leaders, in the past, we've had schools select who those people are. They sent them to training. They planned for redelivering those content modules to their teachers, and we still want that to happen. Next year, we're adding science content leaders, so we want to make sure those people are selected and attend training. And then, as I mentioned, for our districts with CIR schools, they created a professional development plan to include the content module redelivery, meaning content leaders are redelivering the training they received to their teachers. And so what's important this year is that that plan at the school level is aligned to the district plan. So your school plan for redelivery is not only created, but it's aligned to the district plan that was submitted. For intervention content leaders, we have previously focused on identifying the school leader and teacher to serve in the role and for them to attend training. We still want that to happen if that's needed. If you already have those leaders on your campus, they don't need to go to training again. But looking into next year, your intervention content leaders are supporting unit and lesson study during common planning time to address supports for students with unfinished learning. And they are helping teachers understand the content and supports that exist. And as I mentioned before, this looks different across district and school. It could be that the intervention content leader helps the instructional leadership team plan for common planning. They help create agendas or materials. It could be that the intervention content leader is assigned to certain grade level planning. It could be they're leading that planning time, or they're leading a section of that time, or they're working with certain teachers on how to address the needs of different students. So this could look very different, but the focus here is they are supporting teachers in planning for students with unfinished learning. And then we have our mentor teachers. So the focus on our mentor teachers has mostly been on the completion of training and successfully attaining their credential and certification. So we still want that to happen, but in 2020, 2021, the focus will shift threefold. So you probably have mentor teachers that are already doing these things, but the focus next year is we want to see these actions happening at schools with mentor teachers. And that is, one, they're scheduling observations with their mentees. Two, they are establishing coaching cycles with them. And three, they're providing mentoring time, particularly for BESI policy, 5 hours a week for post-bac candidates. So these are your teachers who graduated college, but they don't have their certification. So they're working on their certification. So again, we want them observing, coaching, and mentoring. And those are the three actions we're going to focus on for next year. For student graduation planning, since our academic strategy evolved to include our comprehensive intervention required, our CIR high schools, having that planning partner to support the work of graduation planning, we now have actions for counselors to implement this work. So remember, this fell on counselors. It was a lot of work to do depending on how many counselors were at the high school and how many kids. And so we wanted to provide support at high schools for this workload to be lifted off the counselor. And so all of our CIR high schools have a planning partner that the district's contracted with to help do this work. And we want the counselors to be in the loop, collaborating with them on two things: ensuring that the planning partner has a plan for every 9th grade student through the end of 10th grade. And that includes whatever coursework they need for the first 2 years aligned to their pathway. And the second thing is ensuring all high school students are reviewing and revising their plan twice a year. So these two things, to be clear, are already things that must happen in high schools. The difference this year is we are now providing a partner to come and work at these CIR high schools to make sure these things happen for students. We want them to increase their graduation rate by having a plan for every kid aligned to their pathway, and it's updated as needed. And then we talked about the Strong Start plans earlier. And while school system leaders are creating these plans and ensuring structures exist district-wide to ensure the Strong Start for every student and the continuous education plan, there are a set of things that school leaders will be doing to implement that plan. So again, your districts are still working on this plan. When they release that to the school leaders, there's a set of actions that they will be responsible for. One of them is, and we've mentioned this a few times, the students with the most significant gaps have a plan. So they're ensuring their grade level teams or their teachers or whoever at the school level are creating plans for those students that need the most support. They're ensuring quality instruction continues to happen regardless of modified operations. Their high schoolers are on track to graduate and transition to their college or career plan. That during modified operations, teachers are contacting students every day. So they are reaching out to every kid every day to check on them, touch base with them, and they're providing at least weekly feedback on their work. And they're also ensuring that teachers continue to receive the professional learning they need, and that includes training on distance learning. So again, your district's creating this plan, but there are a set of actions that will fall at the school level, and these are those actions. All right, I have a few questions that have come through, so let me stop and check those. We have a question about if the school year in their district is starting with distance learning, what's the plan for administering assessments? So again, your district is working on this now, and I would wait until you hear from your school leader or your district on what this looks like for you all. So they have the flexibility to determine what that looks like for your district. Can the intervention content leader, mentor, teacher be the same person? It can. I would say that is not the norm. It is pretty rare if someone is more than one, just because of the amount of training that that person goes through, the assessment they must take to become certified. Now, if they have already done that once, for one thing, maybe they were an ELA content leader and they did all the work to become certified, they might be able to add something this year. So it's, they didn't do both at the same time. But I would check with your school leader or your district leader to see how they're implementing or selecting those roles and what the expectations are within your district or school. So it can be, although it is not normally the same person, but it could be. And then we have a question about mentor teachers and what the 5 hours a week looks like, and also, is there a certain amount of mentees they can have? So again, district and school leaders decide this. So I would reach out to your principal or your district They can have more than one mentee. So you can have a mentor teacher with 2 mentees or 3 mentees. Just really depends on the configuration at your school. We also have schools that have multiple mentor teachers, which is also normal. So you could have several mentor teachers and they each have 1 or 2, just depending on the makeup of the school. And then the 5 hours of mentoring, again, this is determined by the leadership team at your school. That could be one-on-one with a teacher. That could be meetings with multiple mentees. That could be observing and providing feedback. It could be helping them with planning. So it really just depends on what the school leadership team decides. And it also depends on who the mentee is. Each teacher will need a different kind of support, and it should be created to support that individual teacher. So it looks however the school leadership team determines. Great question. Okay, I think those are the only ones that have come through. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through the buckets of support that help teachers and school leaders achieve the vision for improving schools and students. So remember, at the core, the most important thing is that teachers are delivering high quality instruction for every student every day. So if we want that to happen, we have 3 layers of support. So we have our school leaders, our district leaders, and our state leaders that have a role and responsibility so that teachers can achieve that vision for students. So our school leadership, this consists of principals, leadership teams, content leaders, mentor teachers, and these groups play a vital role in supporting teachers in delivering high quality instruction for every student every day. So your principals, they're providing training, planning time, observations, coaching for all teachers, and they're also executing their plan for improvement. And that's at every school. So every principal, regardless of how well their school performs, is always striving to improve and do better. And so they're executing that plan while supporting every teacher through training and observation and planning time. Our school leadership teams, and this looks different on every campus, and that's determined by the principal, who's on the leadership team, what roles they have, et cetera. They support the work of common planning time and observing and provide feedback to teachers. So they're supporting common planning and providing feedback on common planning. They're supporting instruction by observing, and they're providing feedback on those observations. Your content leaders, they are helping build content knowledge of their colleagues by redelivering the training or the content modules that they've received. And then your mentor teachers, they're supporting your new, resident, and struggling teachers. And again, this looks different for every mentee, every campus, every district. So the next layer of support are your district leaders. And your district leaders are accountable for supporting principals and their leadership teams drive improvement in their school by providing time, tools, and resources. So your district leaders must connect with principals to ensure their master schedule includes planning time, includes observation time, and coaching time. They're also using classroom and common planning observation tools to reflect on the progress being made at each school. So what's working, what progress has been made since the last time we've come, what areas need improvement, what are the next steps? So they are using those tools with principals to have those discussions about what's happening at their school. And additionally, they must provide the materials and training schools need so that teachers can deliver effective instruction every day. And then at the state, we're supporting your district leaders in executing their academic plans that they've created through training, support, and tools. And I want to look a little closer at each of these 3 levers for how we support districts execute those plans. So when we talk about training, we provide training to district leaders So that's their Teacher Leader Summit, our School Support Institute, and our Super App launch event. And these three areas provide the platform for the academic strategy and implementation priorities to be delivered. So you all are here today at the Teacher Leader Summit. This is one of the types of trainings that we provide districts and schools so that when they start the school year next year, they have what they need to plan, deliver high quality instruction, support students, etc. At the summit and at the School Support Institute, a focus is on leadership teams building their leadership action plan. So every principal does this. This is what great schools do. They have a plan for next school year where they're talking through key areas of improvement in their school. And that includes what their instructional leadership team looks like and does, what the professional development for their teachers is, the structures for observation and feedback, how they will utilize their content leaders and mentor teachers, and what the support will look like for every student and their needs on campus. And then the training is supported through frequent and consistent communication structures. So we have monthly calls with every superintendent. We have monthly calls with all your district leaders where we are rolling out information they need, deadlines coming up, training, support, policies, resources aligned to strategy, things like that. So they are in the loop. And then we have network teams who provide in-school assistance to your principals. So every district has a network coach and they support them in implementing their plans and improvement. In particular, our CIR and UIR schools receive support throughout the school year in two ways. So again, these are our struggling schools and districts. They are receiving support through their network coach in two ways. One, their network coach is working on a list of summer milestones. So those first step foundational things that happen in the summer to get ready for the school year. And the structures that exist at the school to implement strategy. So common planning time, making sure their instructional leadership team is meeting and what that looks like. So the summer milestones and then the structures throughout the school year. And so they work with them to ensure those things are on track and are happening. And then the second thing is they're discussing the data they collect from observing classrooms and common planning time. So they're observing ELA math and science classrooms and talking about what they see. They're observing common planning time, talking about what they see, and helping the school leader determine what the next steps are, what support is needed. Lastly, district leaders receive classroom support and common planning time tools along with those school support structures. So again, in the chat, that link to the school improvement library, you will find these things there. There is a K2 classroom observation tool, the 312 tool, the common planning tool. These are the updated ones for next year. So all of the implementation actions we just went through, you'll notice those tools now include them. There are two classroom observation tools, the K2 tool and the 312 tool. Again, these are in the school improvement library and have been updated for next year. Those tools continue to focus on high quality curriculum and engaging students in that curriculum. This year, you'll notice two shifts, and these are reflective of those implementation actions we talked through. So the first one is no longer separate tools. The observation tools include ELA math and science look-fors in one place. So there is not a 312 ELA, a 312 math, a 312 science. There's just one 312 tool that includes ELA math and science. Same with K2. Both tools have the same three indicators. So if you're looking at K2 and you're looking at 312, you will notice three indicators: effective delivery of instruction, student engagement, and then monitoring learning and providing feedback. And again, these are aligned and updated to our improved strategy and those additional layer of actions that we talked through in each area. So you'll see those in the observation tools as well. And the common planning tool will still include the focus of all teachers being at the table during common planning. So that's your special ed teacher, your interventionist, your reading teacher, your English language teacher. Every teacher that impacts that student should be in the same room during common planning time. And so that is still a focus and a priority. This year, or also I would say, there's still a focus on using high quality curriculum and unpacking units and lessons. So that focus is still there. But this year, the addition aligned to the improved strategy includes a second indicator, and that is that the needs of all students are being addressed. So again, how are teachers planning for students who need additional support? How are they using the diverse learners information? How are they using curriculum embedded support for students that need help with unfinished learning? Also in the tool, what used to be separate is we combined it in one tool, so it's 2 pages. The second page is now a list of the best practices that happen during common planning time for each content area. So you'll notice for ELA, best practices for unit unpacking, lesson unpacking. For math, best practices for unit and lesson unpacking, and for science. So that's in one place. It's just a one-stop shop for all things that should happen during common planning. And you'll also notice there's an emphasis on who is leading the common planning, and this should be an expert. So a content expert, your intervention content leader, a school leader who has the content knowledge or expertise in common planning. And so that is an emphasis on the tool as well. And again, that is in the link that's sent in the chat. You'll notice the K2, 312, and common planning tools. All right, before we close, a few more questions have come through, so let me get to those. Is it okay if I am both a mentor teacher and a content leader and you are certified in both? Yes, absolutely. You can be both. Do content leaders or mentor teachers also teach class? Yes, I would say the majority of people who have these roles are teachers in a classroom. And so what their support looks like is built in leadership action plans by the principal. So if you're a content leader, you are most likely teaching that content. If you are a mentor teacher, you're most likely a teacher and you have a mentee. But that could be someone not in the classroom. It could be an assistant principal or a principal, depending on the capacity of the school or configuration. So it just depends. But I would say the overwhelming majority of content leaders are teaching that content, and mentor teachers are in the classroom. We have a question about the kindergarten entry assessment. Okay, I think I understand. So if the kindergarten entry assessment and the K-3 literacy screeners are done within 30 days of school, I think the question is saying, what if school starts and it's distance learning, or it starts and everyone's in person, but then it goes to distance learning? How is that impacted? This is what your districts are planning for right now. So they will have a plan in place that will then be rolled out to school leaders on what that looks like. But yes, they should consider and anticipate what that looks like. And that's a huge part of what their continuous education plan includes. So what do things look like if we have modified operations, school closures, et cetera. That's a great question, but your districts are preparing for that. All right, so I just want to recap our strategy and priorities by highlighting a few key points. The first one is your districts have created strong, coherent academic plans for next school year, and they are adapting those plans to ensure a strong start for every student and that there is a continuous education plan. The second thing is support for teachers by providing common planning time and building content knowledge must be maintained regardless of modified operations or closures. So teachers should still have common planning time. They should still be receiving content modules redelivered, but that may look different, especially this summer, as most districts are doing some sort of virtual training for this. Because it is still important that next year our kids are getting high quality instruction every day. There are also many leaders at the school level that have a focus on achieving the vision for student success. And so your principals are using those leaders or building capacity in people on campus to be in those leader roles to help improve their school. And as we discussed through the last half, there are additional actions this school year that have been updated to priorities or in the observation or common planning tools in order to implement the improved academic strategy effectively. So I want to talk through a few links here. So the first one, again, is the same one that's been in the chat, the School Improvement Library. That has the observation tools. It has the second link here, which is the School System Planning Guide. But this is the one-stop shop go-to place for district leaders on school improvement. So if you are interested in learning more about it, I know a lot of our teachers who are at the summit like to learn beyond their classroom. Our principals like to learn beyond their school, and our district leaders like to learn statewide. And so just expanding your knowledge. If that's of interest to you, I would dive into the School Improvement Library. The School System Planning Guide is the guide your districts use to create their district plan. So this has basically all the information that we've went through today in this PowerPoint, but this is what your districts have done the past couple years. So they are implementing these strategies. If you want to know more information about what that looks like, the link's there. And then the next link, the third one, is the Strong Start Library. And this has a ton of resources, but it includes the Strong Start Planning Guide. So the priorities that I mentioned that your districts are planning for are located there, along with several resources that your districts are using to create those plans. So if you're interested in learning more about that, that is the library and the planning guide. And the last link is to a map of Louisiana indicating who your network leader is. So if you are new to being a CIR or UIR school, or new to a district and you don't know who your network leader is, the map is the last link. And throughout Summit, as you know, you will be asked to leave feedback on sessions through the Teacher Leader Summit app. The directions for how to leave feedback are located here. It takes less than 1 minute, but you'll go into the app and click Rate This. And I do have one more question that's come through. So before we jump, as a reminder, if you have any questions about our academic strategy, our school system planning process, Strong Start, any of those things, feel free to email me or contact your network coach. We are more than happy to help and enjoy jumping on the phone and helping you all if you need it. But again, if you have any questions, let me know. We had one more question that came through, so I want to make sure that I get to that before we close. And the question is it possible for a mentor teacher to have an extra planning hour if they're a teacher? So yes, that is an option. Principals determine what this looks like. But if you have teachers who are mentor teachers, they could have an additional hour off to support their teachers. So it could be that they're going in their classrooms and doing observations, or they're meeting with them, but that is an option, and that's determined by the principal. Great question. All right, well, thank you all so much. It was a pleasure talking with you today. Again, if you need anything, feel free to reach out, and I hope you have a great rest of the Teacher Leader Summit. Have a great weekend.